Welcome into this week's episode of Bill's Pod Squad. Maddy Glab here is your host, and I'm with my co-host, of course, Kim Pegula, Bill's owner and president. Kim, we are rolling on, looking ahead to week 10. I can't believe it, but I can believe it at the same time that we are almost mid-November now, and soon enough we'll start hearing the players saying things like, games matter in December and January. And I'm like, how are we already here?
And well, we haven't had any snow yet either, Maddy. I hear that we might have some this weekend, the first snowfall, but mid early November, no snow yet. So far so good.
Looking pretty good. I know it's funny because some of our new players, of course, like you come to Buffalo and you hear about the winter and like how it can be really snowy and, maybe not the most attractive weather place to be. And so Emmanuel Sanders, anytime the weather's a little bit more interesting, whether it's me or somebody from the local media, always has a comment about the weather for him because he also brings it up all the time. And so far he's been like, I think you guys are making this place out to be something really more intense than it actually is. I mean, today's practice was beautiful. It was so sunny. Everybody had like coats on that they took off because it got too warm. So I think a lot of the new players think that we're just like joking, but
messing with them.
they'll learn soon enough, maybe.
They will.
So I know this past week after the Jaguars game, you got to spend some time with the coaches' wives and some of the scouting department's wives. I think it's so cool, and it's no shock at all that an organization like this, even outside of the players and outside of the coaching staff, puts time into creating relationships with each other. I mean, of course, you guys do that with the wives and girlfriends of coaches and players. And I see a lot of times on Instagram or on Twitter that you guys are finally, not that you guys did this last year because everybody was on lockdown last year, but finally this year you guys are able to do things like that. And I know I saw some events in the beginning of the season to kind of introduce some of the new women into the Buffalo Bills. And this past weekend, you got to spend time with some of the other wives. So how was that? And why is there an importance put on the fact of like spending time together and creating relationships with these women?
So someone said to me one time, happy wife, happy life. And I took that to heart. When, as we allude to a lot of time about family, the importance of family and the importance of how things that happen at home and off field can have an effect on what happens on field. Certainly getting to know not just our players, but what happens, in their lives, just like we're going to be talking to AJ soon about his first things going on in his personal life. I do think that it's important, and being a part of the NFL, being a coach is no easy task. Granted, there are certainly perks that go along with it, but it also takes a big drain on their family and their personal life. And while I cannot make play calls, I can't help the offense with some of their running plays or their passing or the defense or any of that thing. What I can do though is to provide just some balance throughout their life. And I think having that relationship, getting women together just to relax. We all are going through the same thing, whether it's COVID, whether it's our children, whether it's work-life balance. I find that there's so many things that we have in common, and it's just nice to kind of give each other a break, have some common bond, and just get to appreciate each other. And I think then they go back and back in their home and back to their day-to-day. And I think there is an appreciation too among our coaches, knowing that their wives are in a good place, that their home life is in a good place, whether it's for a day or week, for the whole year. I think it's just really important to have that balance and peace of mind in a season that is long. We don't usually get together, but we just, many of us were at the Jacksonville game, so we were able to commiserate afterwards on that. But But I do think that it is important. And I know I personally get a lot out of it. I get busy, I get tied up, I'm focusing on football and the team and the wins and losses. It's also a good reminder for myself as well to slow things down, find a little balance, have some laughs, and take some time off. And now I'm ready to get back to work.
Yeah, I think it's also so cool. And I mean, it goes without saying, like, just being with women or men, whoever it may be, but people that you share a similar lifestyle with. I mean, is something that bonds you so quickly. I've talked about it on here before. I'm in a group text with all the other NFL team reporters, and like we have things in common that nobody else in the world does because of our jobs. And it's the same scenario for coaches' wives and just people who are around the world of football so much, that just bonds you just so quickly and creates a bond that could last for a lifetime. So I think it's really cool that you head up some of that and take the time to make sure those relationships are made and that new people feel welcome. But also wanted to, before we have AJ Klein on. So AJ Klein is our guest this week. He's a linebacker for the Buffalo Bills. He's in his 9th season. So this is a veteran player who's been around the league and who knows a lot about football and is a great player. So we have him on this week, but not to talk about football. We have him on to talk about National Adoption Month. November is National Adoption Month. He has an adopted son named Cannon. And looking at AJ, he's one of those football players that you look at him and you're like, he is a scary looking dude. He just looks like he is a football player. But you guys will hear in a second, he is way more of a softie than I thought he was. But Kim, you have a tie to National Adoption Month too. I know some people know this, but maybe not everybody knows that you are adopted. So would you like to share your story about your adoption, whether that be how it came to be or what you think of National Adoption Month, just to set up our conversation with AJ?
Yes, I was very fortunate, so blessed to be adopted. My parents obviously were from Canada and actually became U.S. citizens so that solely for the reason so they could adopt me. That was one of the rules
Wow.
that they had to do. So they moved into the U.S. into Rochester, where I grew up in town of Fairport. Had 2 older boys. So really no need, except just felt like in their heart that they had more to give and chose the adoption route. And I was, blessed to be adopted by them. I tell people all the time that I was chosen, whether or not, back in the day, there wasn't, they didn't get to choose like anything. They just said, whatever you have, we're open to adoption. And I was very fortunate. I was left in South Korea at the police station, with no parents, was put into an orphanage where I was there and then was adopted from there in South Korea. I had the awesome opportunity a few years ago to go back to Korea
Yeah.
with my dad, with my children, with my husband, to kind of experience kind of where it all began. It's a 12-hour flight. And so, throughout growing up, throughout my whole life, it just seemed like a far off place for me, just that's where I was born. But like there was no relationship or link, just because it was so far away. And this was the first time I had been back and was able to, visit the adoption agency that's still in operation today. Was able to go to the spot where my building was, where I had spent about 6-9 months. And the adoption agency is still there. And then just to kind of be, take it all in. And I will tell you what a great opportunity. It was a great opportunity for my kids to see where I came from and show great appreciation for that. But I will say that everything, people always ask me, was there something, what's the big thing that changed in your life? Or, what was so important? Or is there any pivot points in your life that you feel like you became a success? Or, just what are some big moments that led you to where you are now? And I say it all started with that adoption. I just cannot imagine my life where I would be without someone in this world feeling like they had more love to give, and me being so lucky to be chosen to be that person. So I'm so blessed to be here, to be an adoptee, and I would recommend it to many, and I look forward to hearing AJ's story.
Wow, that is so cool to hear that, and to hear a little bit about your story, being adopted and coming to the United States, and hearing that your parents became US citizens just so they could adopt you. Like, how special is that? That's such a cool note and nugget. And we'll hear that from AJ, and just what it meant to adopt his son and the process that he went through doing it, and hear a little bit more about your adoption, which I know you said there were some pictures out there, so we may have to dig those up, Kim.
Okay, yeah. Let's just say I was having a bad hair day in
Yeah.
the pictures.
Hey, well, you only have good hair days now, so. Well, we'll get right to our conversation with AJ. AJ Klein is, like I said, he's been in the NFL for 9 years. He's played for the Carolina Panthers, of course, that lovely pipeline from the Panthers to the Bills, but he also played for the Saints before coming to Buffalo. So he knows Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott from their earlier days with the Carolina Panthers. So here's our conversation with AJ Klein. AJ, thank you so much for taking the time to be on our podcast this week. We always love hearing from our players, especially ones that have cool stories, whether that be on the field or off the field. And you definitely have a cool story of your own. We wanted to have you on in November because November is National Adoption Month. So we'll just start off right there. It's an important month for both you and Kim. We'll go with you first, AJ. Why do you have an appreciation for this month to begin with?
Well, first of all, appreciate you having me on. Anytime I can talk about my son, and obviously the month, Adoption Awareness Month, is an opportunity for me to spread my story and the story of my son and the love that comes from adoption. So it's for me, it started as a prayer, and having God pray on my heart a little bit of whether or not I was ready for adoption or not, because it's a big step, and I'm just more than thankful that He did speak to my heart, and that I ended up going through with the adoption, and now my son is my world. So,
AJ, did you have, you said you were praying for it. Was there a lot of apprehension? Was it just, the unknown, whether or not you were ready to be a father versus just adopting someone that you didn't know who this person was or where they came from? What was that apprehension like for you?
so for me, the apprehension, obviously, a little bit of both. I wasn't a father yet. My son Cannon made me a father, and adoption is, after going through it, you have to learn a lot about the process. Like, a lot of people don't necessarily know the steps in the process that you have to go through to actually go through with an adoption, and all the things that come along with it. So whether or not you want to open and closed adoption, and I think this is kind of the awareness I want to bring to the situation as well, is some of even though adoption is such a beautiful thing, I think there are some things that we as adoptive parents or people that have been touched by adoption can bring to the forefront, is that it's not always a clean process. Like, there's some I don't want to say skeletons in the closet, but it's things that I learned that made me, how do I want to phrase it the right way? So, just for example, when you put in for the adoption process, you get to choose. Basically, you're basically buying a baby, and that's kind of a hard pill to swallow at first. So I think part of that was the apprehension was like, is this really for me? Is this really for us? And it's hard to be given a list and being like, well, I would like this nationality, or I would want this gender, or I would want whatever it may be, and to go into it with just an open mind and everything, be like, you know what, I'm going to pray to God about this, and we're just going to be open to every possibility, and whatever child, whether it's male, female, white, black, Asian, Mexican, mixed, it doesn't matter. That child was meant for to be my son or my daughter. So that was a little bit of apprehension. And then obviously I wasn't a father yet. And I was obviously with my ex-wife. We were trying to get pregnant at the same time. And thankfully, my daughter was born 6 months later. So it was a busy household for me. So they're 6 months and 2 days apart, and they are best of friends more than anything. And it was a lot to swallow in such a short period of time. And what makes my story a little bit different, did the adoption process, did the home study. And usually you're on a waiting list for about a year and a half, 2 years before you can get chosen or placed. We were placed in less than 2 weeks, and
Wow.
he was born 3 months later. So it was like lickety split. It was really fast. So it was a lot to digest, but I mean, now looking back on it all, I kind of go, one, thank God for bringing us through that and getting everything done. We had a little hiccup with the adoption process in the courts, but everything worked out smoothly and it happened the way it was exactly supposed to happen.
Well, AJ, my adoption process was quick, but not quite as 2 weeks quick. But if you can recall, back when I was, 4.5 years old, which was a long time ago, there's no cell phones, right? There's no internet, there's none of that stuff. So my parents had to do everything old school by snail mail. And mine, of course, was an international adoption. So that was even slower. So my dad recalls, like, he would have to write a letter, put it in the mail, fill out the forms, and you literally just sit there and wait to get a letter back. So you are fortunate that now live in a world where some of that you don't have to go through. But either way, the fact that for me, I'm obviously a huge advocate of adoption. What I love to tell people, and I'm sure you feel the same way, is that I feel my parents as well had 2 natural birth boys who were already born when I came along. And the fact, I always just tell the people that, when you're adopted, you're chosen, right? So nothing wrong with, natural birth, nothing wrong with quote accident, or surprise, or whatever all those other ways of coming into this world. But I always just tell people that I was so fortunate, because I feel like adoption is someone cared enough, like you, to go through the process to actually choose to be a part of someone's life and choose this person to be part of their lives forever. And it's a special feeling that I think all adoptees should always know, that they were chosen.
That's a really great point, Kim. Do you remember anything? Do you remember that day off the top of your head still, when you got adopted and when you came to the United States?
Well, there are some embarrassing pictures of me, Maddy, I'm not gonna lie. So if you can, like, again, that's, I'm in a way long ago time capsule. And so I'm sure that I remember things because I was told things and I've seen the pictures, but on my adoption, I would say that I went to Howard Johnson's, which I don't, probably is not, there's no Howard Johnson's anymore, but used to be not only a hotel, but used to be a restaurant. So that was my first restaurant, and I ate spaghetti, which is still one of my all-time favorite foods to this day. So those are kind of things that I remember, and I do have some pictures of me back in the day. And I was fortunate, when I turned 50, my parents kind of framed for me my little outfit that I wore on the plane when I landed here in the US. So as a reminder of where I came from.
Wow. So awesome.
Yeah, that's a really cool story. And AJ, I'm sure Cannon is going to have a story like that when he's older and able to, advocate for being adopted and for people who are looking to adopt or opening their hearts to the idea of adopting. And I love having both of you on to talk about this, because it's something personally that I really want to do later in life. And I feel like God has given me that heart to want to do that. So it's just so also insightful to hear from the both of you with your experiences, just because it's something that I've really wanted to do for a long time. So hopefully later in life, I'll be able to do that and be blessed with the opportunity to do that. But AJ, going through the process, I know you talked a little bit already just about the process of adopting Cannon, but can we just get into a little bit more about how crazy it was to have Cannon and then have Bowie within like a 6-month span. And especially as you said, like being a new dad, there's some unsureness about just being a dad to begin with. And, you know, all the responsibility that comes along with like, all right, I'm going to really have to be mature now. Not saying that you were mature to not mature to begin with, but like, it's like, all right, I'm going to be a dad and I'm going to be a dad to an adopted son. And then here comes my daughter not too long after. What was that whirlwind like, welcoming 2 kids into the world?
Yeah, I think for me, going through the entire process, it never really hit me until the day he was born. I was in the room. We were in the room for the birth. We were able to hold him right away, had our own room in the hospital. So we spent the first night with us. Like I just remember my first night actually being able to sit and hold him. And I just started crying because you don't realize the gravity of the situation. You don't realize like just the instantaneous love that came out of it was something, and it's a feeling I'll never forget. I'm kind of getting chill bumps just thinking about it, because one, you're thrust into this position of being a father and now having not only responsibility for yourself, but this tiny human that you have to care, love, and cherish. And it's not, I don't want to say it's a dog, but like people always try to say like, oh, you have pets. It's a completely different type of love. And it hit me all in one shot. So I took that responsibility, and him coming on so fast, and then Bowie being born 6 months and 2 days later during the football season, to juggle that and to have 2 kids. There's a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of changing of diapers. I can say that much, but I don't know. It's just a feeling that's hard to describe. The amount of just the innate flip of a switch that goes from old you to new you being dad. And your parents always tell you, you never know what it's like, the love that you have for your children until you become a parent. And I mean, that couldn't be more true.
Right. And I think the quick bond that you talked about earlier, they're best of friends, and just the short difference in age, I'm sure really helped cement and bond that relationship of brother and sister. I know that
Yes.
Although I was my next older brother was 3 years, and we're all 3 years apart. But coming into their lives when I was 5 and they were 8, like there's certainly a bond there that and especially because I was the youngest, so they took good care of me. But I'm sure that all that you went through, and your children now have taken that and really cemented that into a bond of brother and sister that I'm sure is just wonderful to see.
Oh yeah, it's funny. One of them leaves the room, and then Bowie's like, "Where's Cannon? Like, where'd he go?" Like they can't even be separate from each other because they're always looking for each other. It's so cute.
Yeah.
How
Maddy,
old are? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I do have one crazy story, which is
Yeah.
not really relevant to anything we're talking about, but I'm going to share it. I mean, it's a little bit relevant, but I'm going to share it because I think it's the funniest thing ever. So as you know, my husband and I were about 18 years apart.
Mhm.
So when I was first dating him, he's talking about, where I came from and adoption. He was asking questions, and he's like, I was telling him, that I came to the US on New Year's Eve, right? And the year it was, and how I flew into JFK. And he's like, oh my gosh, he's like, I was there. He's like, I was at that airport. He said, and we called the meeting that he went to and all. So he's like, no, I swear I was in that airport at the same time or the same day as when I came here to the US for the first time. So anything is possible for your kids.
That's so funny. Like paths will always cross in the weirdest ways.
Yeah, that is so true.
Yeah, that is a very crazy story, and who would have thought that would have happened? And also the realization of both you and Terry when you guys were talking about that. I cannot imagine the look on his face. How old is Cannon and Bowie now? And you kind of explained their relationship, but what is it like now that they're able to talk and they're getting older together?
So Cannon will be 3 January 25th, and then Bowie will be 3 next July, July 27th. So they are, I don't know if anybody keeps up with my Instagram stories. They're always on off days. We're always cooking. We're doing stuff outside. Yesterday was rolling around in leaves and cooking pot roast. And
Mm.
like I said, they're right next to each other all the time. But it's interesting to see them be so close in age, because I think just like the maturation process and childhood development and all that stuff, they are like neck and neck with each other. They're both like at the same thing. I think with Cannon being a little bit older, she's like trying to keep up with him. And it's just awesome to see. They have their own little conversations, they play together, but they also at the same time are very independent. They both have completely different personalities. Bowie's strong, independent. She's goofy. She laughs. Like, she thinks the funniest little things. I can get her to laugh just by making faces at her. And Cannon's kind of more my sensitive boy. He likes to cuddle when he wakes up. From naps in the morning, he's kind of like my groggy guy, but just loves being held. So it's really cool to see their personalities, even though how they complement each other so well, but how different they are too.
It's funny. Do you find yourself, parents often talk about, your one child is more like me, your other child is more like, the father or whatever. Yep. Do you find that? Because honestly, I find like sometimes that I'm like my adoptive mom, even though I know genetically it's not, there's nothing there, those genes are not there. And then I always joke that there's a lot of things that, I didn't get from my mom, like my singing voice. I can't sing with a lick. But I do find that there's such a balance between nature and nurture. And certainly personalities come out. Anyone that has kids, multiple kids, know that no child is, even if it's genetically the same two parents, every child is different. But it's interesting to see how your child, when you're adopted, still from the nurture that you give them and the environment that they're on, can take on characteristics of the parent, even if there's no biological genetical bond to that. But so who's more, is Cannon or Bone more like you think? Or
I think we both love on them the same. Like, I think they're independent. Obviously they're kind of young to see like what traits they're going to take from mom or dad. That will be something maybe down the road that would be like, oh, this is your mom, this is your dad, and be able to do that now. But to do that now, it's a little tough just because they're so young.
Yeah.
But I don't know, hopefully they get all the good traits from both of us. So
looking back at that decision that you made, to decide to adopt Cannon and where he's at right now, being 3 years old, how did Cannon change your life?
One, he made me a father. Something that, like Kim, like you said earlier, like, you're chosen as an adoptive child. And that's one thing. He was chosen, and at the end of the day, nobody can take away that he's the one that made us parents. Other than having to juggle toddlers and become a dad and be able to multitask and work on nap schedules and cooking and cleaning and like all the stuff of being a parent. But from a deeper perspective, he's really increased, just patience and myself in general. Like, having kids changes you, because you realize like, hey, you can't reason with the 2-year-olds. You can't reason with the 3-year-old. They're going to do what they're going to do. So for me personally, my patience has just been fantastic. Like, make a mess, break something, do this, do that. Like, it doesn't bother me anymore. Like, that part of the old me is dead and gone. And now it's kind of like the go with the flow dad that, you know what, no mistake is a bad mistake, because we always can learn from it. So
children are the best teachers.
Yes.
Yeah, they really are. I grew up with a younger brother and a younger sister, so I know what it was like being a sibling and getting to learn from them, even though they're younger than me. Just being a part of the NFL, being on an NFL team, wherever you were, I mean, you've been on multiple teams, but do you think being on an NFL team has helped you be a better dad? Just in having teammates that are also dads, conversations that you guys have about being a parent, or about relationships with your kids. Or I just think about the Buffalo Bills, and I know last year and this year is completely different with COVID, but in 2019, I mean, kids were running around all the time here on Tuesdays during off days, or whether it was the off season. And I just look at this organization as one that's very family friendly. So I was just curious, is being in the NFL, or maybe being around some of the coaches here or some of the players here, helped you be a better dad at all, just with all the teamwork and team building that you guys do every day?
Yeah, there's quite a few examples of guys, whether it's in Carolina or in New Orleans, and now here. Obviously, I'm praying for the day that off day Tuesdays comes back and the kids can come in and run around. Hopefully next year it comes back. But Drew Brees was a great example. When I was in New Orleans my 3 years, he had his boys, and they would come in and they would just go bananas. They would be playing on the turf, running around, getting the cold tub with us, getting the hot tub. I mean, just having that family atmosphere is huge. And having those kids around allows you to see other dads and how they parent. And it doesn't necessarily have to be even though we always did talk about our kids or what it's like to be a parent. Ben Watson, another great resource as well. And he's got a few books as well. But just to see other dads and other players and how they interact with their kids, and you can pick up little tidbits from everybody. And then not to mention within our chapel services, talking about being servant leaders and being men of God. I think that as well just creates the cohesiveness that you need, because at the end of the day, everybody has to rely on someone and talk to somebody. And I think that's one thing about our locker room, and even the locker rooms that I've been with in the past in New Orleans and Carolina. It's always been open. People have always been very honest with takes on anything, whether it's being a parent, being a husband, being a teammate, politics. I mean, any conversation is always open for discussion. I think that's what makes an NFL locker room the most unique workplace in the entire world, in my opinion. People from all different backgrounds, people from all different ethnicities. I mean, just life experiences brought together for one common goal and one common purpose. And that brings out the best in everybody. So been very fortunate to have that here as well. But I am looking forward to getting the kids in this building and having them run around with all the other kids, hopefully soon.
Let's talk about your experience in Carolina. One thing I would love to know is, obviously you were on that team that went to the Super Bowl. Coach McDermott,
Yep.
Brandon Beane. Just want to know, back then, what changes for the good? We only want to know about the good. Changes for the good. Have you seen a difference in either Coach McDermott or Brandon Beane in how you knew them? Maybe you didn't know them in quite obviously the same way as you know them now as head coach and GMs, but being on that team back in Carolina and having those guys being a part of that team, how have
so
you
I will say with Beane's more behind the scenes, so we don't get our day-to-day interaction with Beane as much, but I can say Beane's always cared about you as a person, even though he's not the coach that's always around in the meetings, even though he's out on the practice field, you're always able to just go up and be very personal, be open with anything that you got going on. They truly care about you. Same with Coach McDermott. It starts with building an organization starts with getting men of character and people of character within your building. And I think that's one thing that they've done here in Buffalo. They've gone out and gotten the pieces, and they truly care about you as a person, as parent, father, whatever it is outside of football. They care about everything besides football. That's what makes them great coaches and great people and great leaders. I will say one thing with Coach McDermott. I remember when he was a DC in Carolina, he was always on top of everything. And I kind of joke with him here once in a while, as he always wants to come over and see the defense work, right? Defensive coordinator by trade, wants to be heavily involved with defense. And I can just see him chomping at the bit, wanting to get back into just having control of the defense. Whereas now his responsibilities are a lot larger than just one side of the football. And he gives me, we go back and forth because he's like, oh, you're the old man that's no fun. We did the little scare tactic thing with the what is that thing even called? The scary Halloween.
The Halloween doll. I saw it in the hallways, hiding
that's in
all
the hallway
over the
around.
place.
They're trying to scare guys with, and I just walked past and gave it a peace sign, and he's like, "Oh, you're no fun." I was like, I said, "I'm no fun." I said, I see you in the back watching us on defense, just crossed arms, not saying anything. So, I just can't emphasize enough how much they truly care. And they've always been there for me through the passing of my father, even back in 2016 when my dad passed away of cancer. Beane got on the plane. I think, it was Beane. Beane got on the plane with Greg Olson, Luke Kuechly, and they took a private jet to be at my dad's funeral. I can't say many other people or organizations would have made that effort to support somebody in a time of need. And I know we've had guys here that have lost loved ones in the past year, 2 years, and the outpouring of love from them is unmatched, I think.
One more football question, then we'll end up with end us with an adoption question. But how much fun is it playing for Leslie Frazier's defense and just being a part of that group? I mean, anytime he talks, like he just like is one of the most insightful people that I hear from, just in regards to his defensive strategy, how he builds his fundamentals or his background for defense as a whole. I mean, the dude was a part of the Chicago Bears defense that shut down pretty much every team. But how much fun is it to be a part of that unit with a defensive coordinator like Leslie Frazier?
Well, it's fun because, one, I think Leslie does a great job of giving us a clear vision of what he wants from us as players and what he wants to create on his defense and his defensive scheme. Open, honesty, communication, going into every single game, every single week, whether the game plan is long or short and small, he's always asking guys for their feedback, their input. He really wants to know what the players are thinking. And I think that's what separates him from other coaches, is he cares about what we think about the game plan. And, but also when he gets up in front and talks to us every afternoon, clear plan moving forward, how we're gonna attack the next day, and it gives us a clear vision moving forward, so we can go out and compete and do the best that we can on game days and in practice when we prepare. So a lot of fun, and I obviously we take pride in our defensive football here. So I'm very fortunate to be a part of this group.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I didn't know about Leslie, and AJ, you probably can confirm all this, but I'd like to talk to the coaching staff in general and just people on the football operations, just chatter and talk. And I was asking Luis, who oversees some of our analytics, like, who's really into this analytics and applying the data? And, he does it for everybody, but like, who's really into it? And he said, Leslie Frazier, he said, by far, is so in tune to the information that we give him, and he always wanting to learn more and more and more, and absorbing the information and how he can use it. And I was just so surprised, because I was here, probably unfairly biased, thinking, oh, it's the younger coaches who are, very high tech savvy, and like they probably are into all this data stuff. And it was Leslie, and that just it confirms what you know and you think about Leslie as just this, wise sage that he just comes across. And I'm like, now I know, because that is how he works, just always wanting to learn, always absorbing information, how to get better, using all the tools that you need. Even though he's had so much experience in his past life, he stays humble to say, I don't know everything, and how can I learn even more? So I'm sure, AJ, you would agree with that. But
I completely agree. It's a testament to him, his character as a man, but also his humility, like you said, to be in this profession for so long, being a player, now being a coach, that he's still trying to learn and constantly evolve every single day. So, I mean, as a player, to hear that from you, obviously, I think we understand when he has Dennis come out and give the presentations and how important it is to take that information and digest it and use it. But a great example to never be complacent with where you are, to always continue to learn. And like I said, we always talk about servant leaders and examples. He's a great example.
Yeah, so happy that he's in our building. I hope he's here forever, but I know a lot of teams probably want him as their head coach, especially with what the Buffalo Bills have been able to do on defense the last couple of seasons. I mean, you guys are the best in the NFL right now. But last question, I'm going to have this question be for both of you guys. Since it's National Adoption Month, what is a piece of advice that you would give to people who are interested in adopting, but maybe a little bit scared about the process, like you talked about, AJ, some of the things that you didn't know about getting into it. So what would be a piece of advice that you would give to people? And then second, what is something that's not out there about adoption that you think should be more talked about? AJ, we can start with you.
Okay. So the first piece, I will say for people that are on the edge of their seat, whether or not they want to adopt or not, I would say do your research as much as you can. There obviously are different adoption agencies across the country, and you have to be comfortable with picking an agency that, in my opinion, should be ethical, that has ethical practices, that's very transparent in how they conduct their adoptions. And if you don't feel comfortable, don't feel bad for taking a step back and letting everything process. But I would say do your research, feel comfortable with your decision of who you decide to go with. And if you see anything or have any hesitation, I think that's probably, like we always say, like your gut instinct can tell a lot. And if you have that gut instinct where like something's not right, you just need to take a step back, don't feel bad for taking a step back and continuing to do your research before you jump in. But at the same time, on the opposite end of that, obviously find an ethical agency, and at the same time, take a leap of faith. Taking that leap of faith is what I did and was part of my experience. And like I said, I can't, it's changed my life forever. And the second part of that question is what was that again? Something that
may not be out there about adoption,
yes.
that you wish was out there, you wish was talked about on the subject.
Yes. So it was in the back of my head. So every single year I think right now there's over a million families in the country that are on the wait list for adoptions, that are trying to go through the process and are waiting to be placed. At the same time, I think we also have to be very open and transparent with the financial costs of adoption as well. And I think that's something that I want to probably, hopefully, or try to pursue when I'm done playing football. But how can we make adoption more financially affordable for these families that necessarily don't have that kind of money to put towards an adoption? There are so many children out there, whether it's in the foster care system, in the adoption system, newborns like him, how you were 4 to 5 years old. There's so many children that need love and need families, and how can we make that more affordable, and how can we continue to advocate for these kids? It's heartbreaking to see, especially, I don't want to get political, but there's children that need our love, and there's children that need families. And I just want everybody to know that, hey, there are lots of children that are ready for adoption, and there are a lot of children that might be in foster care. Whether you choose to adopt or not, if you can get involved in some way, shape, or form, and I think it'll pay off.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And Kim, what about you? What is a piece of advice that you have for people who may be interested or who may be open to looking into adoption? And then also what's something that you wish was more out there about adoption?
Well, I'm a little bit different than AJ because I was the one adopted and not the one doing the adoption. So I probably have a little bit of a different viewpoint. I'm probably going to say, what I would share with others is, just like being a parent, there is never a good time to be a parent. So, I think you did say though, AJ, like, to go all in, to jump in, because, there's, I would just encourage people, if you're trying to plan it out, I agree, do the things that AJ says. I didn't have to go through that process, so I'm going to trust in him, but making sure that you're comfortable with who's facilitating the adoption. But if you just wait because you're not sure the right time, like there's so many things that you can talk yourself out of, and there is no right time as a parent when your child comes whenever that is, through adoption or through natural birth, AJ will say it's instantaneous love. And so, there's nothing you can do to prepare for being a parent, and it does come, it'll come to you. You'll know what to do. So I would just say, it just, if you something that you feel in your heart is for you, there's hurdles for sure, but that shouldn't stop you. And it's okay to be scared, but what you're going to get out of at the end of it is by far surpasses that. And anything that I would want just out there about adoption, I think, again, when I was adopted, I did not have a lot of other adopted kids network around me. So there was always a constant, I'm going to say, well, for me, it was obvious that I was adopted. So there was always constant wanting to fit in, right? So you don't, I learned English so quickly because, of course, I had to, but it's also because, you want to fit in. So if anything else, I would just say for adopted children that are already out there, that obviously no shame whatsoever in being adopted. You should feel like you are chosen, and that you should also, connect with other adopted kids, because I think there is a different bond with that and experiences that you can all share and help. So I would just ask, if you're adopted and, other kids, to share your experiences and to network with them and give them your support.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate the conversation. And AJ, thanks so much for being on and taking the time after meetings. Now that we're close to 6 o'clock here.
No, you're fine.
I appreciate you sharing all that. And it's so cool to just, I don't know, hear from a player completely off the field on a subject like this that you clearly have so much passion for, and you can just see how big your heart is with how you explain it. I think a lot of people think of you as like this big bad linebacker on the Buffalo Bills, and then
it's just a softie.
Yeah,
Wait,
I'm a big softie. That's what kids do to you. They reduce you down to the smallest little thing. So that's a good thing. I'm glad I'm a big softie around my kids.
I love it. AJ, thank you so much.
Thank you, AJ.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you, guys.
And good luck the rest of the season.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
What a wonderful conversation with AJ. So amazing to hear his story, and so cool to kind of get to see just how big his heart is through his love for his son, Cannon. Again, not that I wouldn't expect that from him, because of course you expect that from these players just because of the type of person that comes to play for the Buffalo Bills, with Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, heading all of that up. They just bring in great people. But again, AJ Klein just looks like a football player, and my tiny self is just like, oh, he looks scary, but no, he's not. He's a great guy, and he's scary on the football field for a good reason. But Kim, before we wrap up here today, like I said, we're approaching the middle of November. We're kind of in that midpoint of the season. I know you said this time is kind of the meat for you. And I know you talked about that before, I think maybe last week or the week before. Just once you get into this point of the season, it's just like go, 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 because you're in the middle of hockey and football season now. So it's not like you're preparing for one season to start. We're in the middle of both seasons right now.
Yeah, no, that is true. And I think that as the season progresses, there's constant, ebbs and flows of the season. But as we kind of get starting to the second half, this is where things really come to life, and you're like, oh my gosh, it matters now. And you're not looking just at your own team, you're looking at all the other teams. You start looking at the standings more often, you start looking at the matchups, and then, every time someone is injured, whether it's the team you're playing or the team or our team, like it feels like everything starts to just, it's been simmering, with the first, half season, and then now you start, when you boil water and the little bubbles start coming up on the out, not to a full boil yet, but the little bubbles start showing up around the outside. That's where I feel this week is. The next couple of games is kind of like this, you're not quite yet to the boiling point, but you're getting close. So yes, my anxiety goes up, every game matters, but now we really get into the kind of the meat of the season.
It's getting real out here. I can definitely say that. But up next is a game against the New York Jets. And I know when we think about division opponents, from a coach's perspective, it's a team that you get to play twice a year. So you're more familiar with the players, you're more familiar with the coaching staff if they've been around for a while. And it's a game that you get to play the opponent twice. So you may be able to scheme up for them a little bit better than an opponent who you don't play, all of that type of stuff. But from an owner's perspective, getting to play division opponents, you probably know the owners or people in the ownership group or people in the front office or whoever that may be. You probably have some better relationships maybe with some of those people since you play them multiple times a season, or since you get to see the owners multiple times a season. So what does that look like? Maybe not just for the Jets, but what does that look like for divisional opponents for you? Do you have better relationships with those owners because you play against them, or is it kind of just like a coach's thing where you're like, we still want to, it's not like there's any it's not like we're more better friends because we play each other twice a year. Maybe it's a little bit more intense of a rivalry.
Yeah, it might be opposite. These divisional games are much more meaningful. So, you don't want to be too chummy. So, because you see them all the time, and these are important games. We know that we need to win. And I think as we saw in Jacksonville, just coming, another game where, listen, when you play a team that has nothing to lose, that in itself can be tough. And while I am fully confident in the resilience of our team, but this is the NFL and anything can happen on a given week. We've learned that lesson probably more times than I would like, but we're learning that lesson, and we're going into another game with a team despite their on-field record. It doesn't matter. Each game is about each game each week. And so, and like I said before, when, we talk about these are games that matter, we've got 2 games. We've only played 2 games in our division. So, we are going to have to, these 2 games, and then New England are going to be important games in the second half. So, the urgency is certainly there. But on the ownership side, well, the Jets, it's been a little bit different because he was an ambassador to the UK. So I have not actually seen him in over 4 years. So I've not seen Mr. Johnson, Woody Johnson, for quite a while, and his brother took control of the team while he was gone as the ambassador. So there's a little bit of a difference there. But I love going to New York just because the food, just the atmosphere. And then now New York just trying to get back into COVID. New York is also a time where we often, we have, as I've talked before, just certain things that we do, certain games and being division. So we know we always go to New York. And this is the trip our doctors always treat Terry and I to a dinner, to a place that they go to every time when we play the Jets. And so we're fortunate for them to invite us, and we just always have a great time with them, and seeing them in a completely, just like we talk with AJ, seeing them in a different light. It's nice to have different they are foodies, they are wine connoisseurs. So it is just always fun to spend time with them and appreciate them spending the time and taking us out to dinner in New York.
Yeah, New York has so many good restaurants. You cannot go wrong with just walking around and stopping into a place that you walk by on the street. That's one thing that I've done when I've gone there. I usually try and make a bunch of reservations, but what ends up happening is that I'm in a different part of town when I want to eat dinner. And so then you just are like, this place looks good. And then you sit down and it's amazing pasta or something like that.
It definitely is, but we got work to do. So, you enjoy Saturday night, but, Sunday game day rolls around. So got to get it done.
Yep, I agree. We'll see how the Buffalo Bills do this weekend. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with AJ. Make sure you stay tuned for more Bills Pod Squad episodes, as we'll be having another one coming right to you next week. So thanks for tuning in, and we will hear from you, and you'll hear from us again soon. So thanks, guys.